Thanks for choosing us. We are your home of independent, fearless, and credible journalism. Now, President Mahama has this afternoon named another set of ministers, with the Member of Parliament for Tamale South, Haruna Iddrisu, heading to the Ministry of Education. Now, we will bring you reactions from sector players shortly, but first, let's introduce you to the faces behind the names and provide their brief profiles, because we're just looking at what they bring to the table and some of their expertise. We know that Jifa Gomashi will be going to the creative arts industry, and that's what we're looking forward to, her performance. But all these are nominations. They will have to go through the vetting process and then be approved before they assume their role. We also know that, if you recall, he released the names of 10 different regions, the regional ministers for 10 different regions. And now we know that he has released the list of 3 other regional ministers. And so we'll be looking into that shortly. But let me give you a brief profile of some of the names that have come up. I told you about Haruna Iddrisu. He is Minister-designate for the Education Ministry. And so we would be delving into his expertise and what exactly that sector requires, and if he is indeed the man for the job. Also, Joseph Opoku, he is going also to another ministry, which is the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. We also have Kwame Govins-Agbodza, Minister-designate for Roads and Highways. I told you about Abla Jifa Gomashi. She is now the Minister-designate for Tourism, Culture and Creative Arts. She has occupied that role before, and so we're looking forward to what difference she'll be bringing on board this time. We also have Elizabeth Ofosu Ajare, Minister-designate for Trade, Agribusiness and Industry. Now, for Gender, Children and Social Protection, that ministry has been quite silent for a while. But this time, Agnes Namomolate has been nominated for that role. We'll be looking forward to what exactly her plan for that ministry would be when she appears before the Appointments Committee to be vetted. Also, we are seeing a lot of women in this list. Emilia Alta, Minister-designate for Fisheries and Aquaculture. That ministry was once being headed by Hawa Kumsin, and so we're looking forward to what she'll be bringing on board. We also have Ahmed Ibrahim, Minister-designate for Local Government, Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs. We also have George Opariado, Minister-designate for Youth Development and Empowerment. So let's go into the different profiles, and today on the polls we are focusing on 3 key sectors: the educational sector, agriculture and trade. And so we're looking at the profile of the Minister-designate for that education ministry, Haruna Iddrisu. Now, we know him as the former minority leader. He was also a former Minister for Employment and Labor Relations, former Communications Minister, former Trades and Industry Minister. He was also a member, in fact, he's still currently a member of the Ghana Bar Association. Well, I told you he was the former minority leader. He's a barrister at law. He's also the MP for Tamale South since the year 2004, one of the longest serving members of Parliament. Then we have Kwame Govins-Agbodza. He is Minister-designate for Roads and Highways. He's a chartered architect with extensive experience. He's MP for Adaklu. He has a qualification from Westminster University. He is also the principal consultant for K Partners Limited. He is the member of the Royal Institute of British Architects. He's a member of the Ghana Institute of Architects. He's also the Majority Chief Whip for the 9th Parliament, the Minority Chief Whip. He occupied that position for the 8th Parliament. Now, let's move on to the Agric Ministry. Eric Opoku is vying for that position. He's an expert in law, agriculture, and leadership. He has an LLM, an international business law, University of Essex in the UK. He has a BA in economics and law from KNUST. He's a ranking member, Food and Agriculture Committee in Parliament. So this is the time for us to look at what these nominees bring on board. We'll be focusing on all the nominees here on the Joy News channel, but on the polls today, we're looking at 3 different ministries: education, agri, and trade. We're looking at what exactly they bring to the table. Now, for now, let's assess the nominees and what exactly they bring into the table. We'll start with the Education Ministry. Kofi Asare joins me now. He leads Africa Education Watch. I just want to get his initial reaction to Haruna Iddrisu's nomination for the role of Education Minister. Are you pleased, though? You might have to unmute, Kofi, so that I can hear you loud and clear.
I'm not muted. I'm not muted.
Okay. Please make your point. I wanted your reaction. Haruna Iddrisu heading to the Education Ministry. Are you pleased with his nomination? Do you think he's the man for the job?
Yes. I'm asking if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon to your audience. I think it's refreshing noting that the sector has received a nomination by the president. The president actually has appointed Secretary to the Fall of Parliament, Honorable Haruna Iddrisu. We in the education community are happy that we have a minister, and we are ready to support the minister, work with him to implement the government agenda, and to ensure that education outcomes improve.
Now, let's look at his expertise. We know him as the former minority leader, but he's not an educationist, so are you worried?
No, not at all. Education is not a business for educationists only. So people normally, misconstrue education to be a sector meant for educationists. It's never true. I, for instance, I'm not an educationist. I've never done education in my life before, but I'm doing education policy, right? So having worked with the ministry since 2004, I worked with Honorable Barnard when he was minister. Obviously, I was on the CSO side, and he wasn't an educationist. He was a chartered accountant. And arguably, he's one of the best ministers that I ever worked with. And so it is not the case that you have to be an educationist, to manage education policy well. Education business in public policy, in public sector, is actually much more a matter of public policy management and leadership than being an education expert or an educationist. And so to the extent that, or the extent to which the president's nominee is amenable to the basic tenets of inclusive policy governance, appreciates, public policy, fundamental canons of transparency, accountability, responsiveness, spending efficiency, value for money, and appreciates the centrality of human capital development to the nation's development. I think that he will succeed. It is not, and it's also about using the technocrats available to the advantage of policy. The sector has many experts, okay? And so as a minister, you have to be a good manager of all the expertise available to the benefit of the entire education sector. And that is what an education minister is supposed to do. It's not necessarily teacher or an educationist.
Now, the previous administration, they prioritized education, and it was clear in how they allocated their finances in the budget. However, we're looking at the challenges that this administration may have to deal with. What is Haruna going to be looking forward to fixing in that ministry based on where you sit?
In the past 7 years, we saw education occupying pride of place in government policy, government budget priorities. That is true. Education received averagely 19% of public expenditure between 2017 and 2023. It is partly because the then president, had education high on his agenda. And it is also because the then Minister of Education himself was an advocate for education. If you want to succeed in that seat, you yourself, you must be an advocate for education. You must make the strong case at cabinet for increased resourcing of education. And so the advocacy role of the minister, as you rightly said, is very, very fundamental in ensuring that you are able to lobby, you're able to mobilize, you're able to influence the allocation of resources in favor of education and in favor of executing the 140 plus promises that the NDC has made in their education manifesto. So advocacy and policy influencing, resources influencing is key to the success of the incoming Minister of Education. And I think that having been in Parliament for all this while and understanding the centrality and essence of advocacy and being an advocate himself for good governance and all that, one expects that he should use his experience in lobbying and influencing gained over the years in Parliament, to influence and lobby for more resourcing of education policies, especially in an equitable manner, such that the most deprived districts and regions in education, talk about the 5 northern regions, Western North and UT, receive their fair share of the education kit, especially in respect of education infrastructure, teachers, and teaching and learning resources, so that we are able to bridge the gap between the rural and urban areas in education service provision. And so being an advocate for education and having experience in influencing resources, budgets, and policies and all that is key to the success of the incoming Minister of Education.
Now, one of the flagship programs for the previous administration, the free SHS policy, has come under criticism. Many feel that it ought to be reviewed. Looking at your expectation for this administration and with Haruna, should he go through the vetting process and be approved, would be heading that ministry. What are the key things you feel could be looked at, especially because this administration has served notice that they will be roping in the private sector into the policy?
Well, the NDC manifesto is clear. 3 big tickets in secondary education. 1 is to end double track. 2 is to decentralize the procurement and management of food staff under free senior high school. And 3 is to expand the free senior high school program to include the private sector. And so the work of the Minister of Education is clearly cut out. So we're expecting that the minister will commence by, convening the education conference, which is also in the 100 days or 120-day covenant of the flag bearer or the president. And so he should immediately convene the education conference and discuss the strategies for rolling out these, promises. I say strategies for rolling out because you see, there's a difference between a promise and a policy. The process from promise to policy is a technical process, and it must be managed in a way that aligns with the education strategic plan, and that makes policy sense. And one of the work that Africa Education Watch is doing with the new administration, with support from the FCDU, is to support the government to transition its education promises into policy in a manner that aligns with the broad education strategic plan 2018 to 2030. And so I'm expecting that the minister will, after approval by Parliament, convene the education conference and then use that platform to discuss the strategies to go about in ending the double track, decentralizing the feeding of free senior high school, and including primary schools into the senior high school, free senior high school policy. Based on that, a policy and a roadmap should be issued so that all stakeholders have a fair idea about how government intends to progress. In doing this, we expect that the ministry will be inclusive, that the ministry will take advantage of the support of other organizations and development partners to shape, the approach it intends to adapt to implement these policies in a manner that the implementation process doesn't truncate anything unduly as part of the ongoing free senior high school policy. But then the approach becomes a gradual process of phasing out. For instance, if you want to decentralize the feeding in senior high schools, it doesn't become a simple fiat, as a simple administrative fiat of issuing directive that no more this, no more this, no, but it becomes a gradual rolling out of a process to decentralize feeding so that you do not truncate the centralized process that we have currently. You don't truncate it suddenly in a manner that affects food shortages in schools. And so all these are things that we believe will be discussed by stakeholders at the education conference that we are expecting the ministry and the minister to convene at the earliest convenience once he is approved by Parliament.
Thank you, Kofi Asare. He is Executive Director for Africa Education Watch. Now, let me bring in Thomas Musa. He is General Secretary of NAT. Thank you so much for your time here on The Pulse. Your initial reaction, Education Minister nominee Haruna Iddrisu.
Very much. Good afternoon to yourself and to your listeners. Yes, I think I met Haruna in the 90s, specifically at the University of Ghana. I was in Commonwealth 4, and that was where we met. And particularly regarding his contribution when he became the NUC's president. And at the time, we were then confronted with this policy of academic user facility fee and all that. And it was even this time that it became necessary that we start fighting for the GET fund, as education trust fund or whatever we may call it. And thank God that today we have the GET fund. So I believe that the challenges that confronted tertiary education and that his administration saw, and we led series of demonstrations and all that, and today we have the GET fund. I believe that the same challenge is confronting basic education in Ghana today, where capitation grant is in arrears for over 2 years. The school feeding is in arrears. We are deceiving ourselves that we are feeding children on 1 cedi, 50 pesos a cedi, 1 cedi, 50 pesos a day. We are owing WAEC, the government subvention that must go to all the SHS, the education, the district education offices and all that. All those things are not going. So I believe that the number one thing that we are all expecting is how we can get sustainable funding for basic education. And I believe that given his rich experience, both in his student days and also having worked in the government space for all these years, I don't think Haruna is a novice. He's well experienced, and we hope that he bring his experience to bear on all those things and make sure that he leaves a very good legacy for himself and for his career. Yeah.
Now, the free SHS policy is one that many have called for a review. As this new government takes office, they've also served notice that they'll be roping in the private sector. What's your expectation of the Minister-designate should he assume office?
Yes, I think we are all clear. Number one, the free SHS, it has come to stay. For me, my understanding is that the free SHS, there are parents and families that cannot afford. And so they must be taken care of. And that is why even we have the LEAP and all that. In every society, you don't expect everybody to be treated equally. So we believe in the equity principle. The equity principle gives to each person according to his needs or his requirement. That is what we believe. So the VSHS has come to stay. And I believe that during the consultative forum, that the discussion that we'll be having, all these things will come to fore as to how we intend to address the review we are talking about. And let us all get it clear. Well, the review that people are calling for is specifically from the point of view of the Ghana National Association of Teachers. We published a book on this particular thing as far back as 2017. We did a research on it, and we said, look, the equality principle is not the way to go. The equity principle is the way to go, and is to ensure that we get this particular policy to be sustainable. And so if on this particular point we think that we need to bring in people, we even went ahead to recommend, now look, let us see how best we can provide some, put certain percentage of increase on the VAT to take care of basic education. We have also recommended that the Heritage Fund, how can we actually make some funds available from it specifically to basic education? We look at the issue of property rate, among other things, all in attempt of making sure that we'll be able to rake in revenue to really shape basic education. Because if we don't do that, we'll end up creating a class society where those who have, those who don't have, they'll continue to be poorer. And we must all take note that the only weapon known in human history that we can use to break poverty is education.
Okay. Thank you so much, Thomas Musa. He is General Secretary of NAT. Let's also shift our attention now to another crucial sector, the trade sector, with stakeholders such as the Ghana Union Traders Association, all in that sector, as well as the Ghana Institute of Freight Forwarders and the Importers and Exporters Association, raising significant concerns and expectations in that sector. Elizabeth Ofosu-Adjare has been nominated to lead that ministry, and we're wondering what she brings to the table. Well, on your screens now is her profile. She's a lawyer, an international relations expert. She is the former Minister for Tourism, Culture and Creative Arts. She has an LLB from the University of Ghana. She has a BA in Social Science from KNUST. Well, let's go on Zoom now and speak to the president of GUTA, Joseph Opoku. Thank you so much, Doc, for your time here on The Pulse. I also have joining me via Zoom, Jacob Ajiman. He's spokesperson for the Ghana Institute of Freight Forwarders. Thank you so much for your time here on The Pulse. Now, I'll start with you, Dr. Joseph Opoku. What are your expectations of this ministry, even as the president has released the list of his nominee to chair that ministry?
Yeah, we are very happy to have Madam on board. And we are expecting that she follows suit to the other women predecessors like Emma Mitchell and Hannah Tete. And they all delivered. We have encounter with these ministers, and they actually delivered and performed. That's why I'm very happy to see a woman coming back, because normally they are very receptive and very accommodative. And I believe that we are going to have a very good encounter or cooperation with Madam as she assumes office of the Trade Ministry. And as she's coming, we are also prepared to give our support to her, if only she also adopts an open door attitude towards all the stakeholders.
What are the immediate challenges that you feel she must address should she assume office?
Yeah, so you see, the Trade Ministry is where we channel all our grievances. So sometimes, if you are not careful, you think that they are overlapping some of their functions. Because when you talk at the port, the port is supposed to go under the transport ministry. When you talk about high cost of doing business, it also goes under the finance ministry and all that, the taxes that we pay and all that. But that's the center point for us, the traders, because that's our center minister, and we are going to engage there in these diverse areas. So we are, what is very much expectant of her is to how to move us from mere trading to captains of industry. That's what, because now that we are talking about import substitution, that should be the major preoccupation of the of government policy towards trading, that we migrate from importation into manufacturing. And so I think it's going to be one of the core issues and all that. The issues about foreigners in the retail trade, you know, it's never leaving us unless we revise the investment laws and also make serious enforcement of the laws that foresees these people. And so these are the critical areas that we are going to look at. Access to credit, as I've said, you don't know whether to place it under the ministry or place it under the finance ministry, but definitely it's under the finance ministry. But we channel these grievances also to them, because you know the women in trade and how we are seeking funds for them. It means that she's going to have a critical role in this women's bank thing and all that, and our women food will definitely depend on her. So we welcome her, and then we are also going to think about how to restructure our markets and also ensure that we have satellite markets to decongest the markets. It has been a problem, because if you look at the perennial fire outbreaks and all that, is due to the fact that our markets are so concentrated and then congested. So how are we going to also find resources and then also modify our markets and make satellite markets to decongest, and then also put these fire outbreaks behind us. So all these things will come under the purview of the incoming trade minister. But definitely, I'm very excited to work with the woman again, because we had success with the Hannah Tete. She was just fantastic. Emma Mitchell, if you have heard about her, was also just so fantastic. So I pray that she follows these great women and also perform to our expectation.
Okay, thank you, Joseph, for being. Now, let me bring in Jacob Ajiman. Your initial thoughts about her nomination?
Good afternoon to
our
listeners. Yes, we congratulate her for her nomination, especially she being a woman. We trust that she will bring that soft aspect of leadership and management that will help promote the trade and industry ministry. So our initial thought, congratulations to her, and we wish her the best. Yes.
What are the key challenges you feel she should immediately address should she assume her role as minister?
Immediately, we expect her to look at the challenge. One of the challenges we expect her to look at is the shipping line administrative cost or charge. As Dr. Obi rightly said, you know, in some cases, you may assume that some of these things will fall under trade, some will fall under finance, some will fall under transport. But the overall responsibility basically is about trade and industry. So we as freight forwarders, we expect that immediately she must tackle the issue of shipping line local administrative charge. This is a charge that no liner shipping company should charge any importer importing commodities into Ghana, because the freight that any importer pays to the shipping company comprises of all the local charges over here. So when an importer pays the freight, all the importer needs to do is present his bill of lading or her bill of lading to the shipping line through his freight forwarder or her freight forwarder and take delivery of his goods. However, the practice in our country is totally different. Shipping lines in Ghana, all shipping lines in Ghana, the charges what you call local administrative fee. This practice has gone on over 20 years and it keeps happening and it keeps going higher and higher. In 2021, Temaport alone did about 1.2 million containers in just that year. Averagely, a shipping line at that time charges about 5,000 Ghana cedis per 20-footer container. Now, if you multiply 1.2 million containers by 5,000 Ghana cedis, that gives you more than 6 billion Ghana cedis. If you do the conversion into dollars by even today's rate, it gives you not less than $300 million per year. This is illegitimate money shipping lines are taking or collecting from Ghanaian traders. That must stop. We expect the trade minister to lead advocacy through the Ghana Shippers Authority to put a stop to these arbitrary charges. That is one. Two, we expect her to help fight the arbitrary exchange rate applied by the same shipping lines. Bank of Ghana can issue an exchange rate of, let's say, 15 cedis to $1. This is just an assumption. The shipping lines can apply 16.5, 17 Ghana cedis to $1. This practice must stop. Thirdly, we expect her to help fight the infiltration of foreigners in clearing and forwarding. If you read the Customs Act 891/2015, Section 43(1), it tells us that clearing and forwarding is the indigenous business, or is business for indigenous Ghanaians. Why are we having foreigners doing clearing and forwarding? Why are we having Lebanese, Chinese, Burkinabes, Ivorians, Nigerians doing clearing and forwarding in our ports? This practice must stop. And these are the areas we expect her immediately to tackle. On the long term, the other issues we will consider when we sit on the round table. But immediately, these are things we expect her to tackle.
Okay, thank you so much, Jacob Ajiman. Let's move on to the agricultural sector. It plays a crucial role in the economy, and Eric Opoku has been nominated as a minister-designate for that ministry. Now, on your screens now is his profile. He's an expert in law, agriculture, and leadership. He has an LLM, international business law from the University of Essex in UK. He has a BA in economics and law from KNUST. He's ranking member of Food and Agricultural Committee. Let me bring in Edward Caraway just to get their thoughts as an association, because I know that he is the former president of the General Agricultural Workers Union. Thank you so much for your time. Let me get your initial reaction. Eric Opoku, is he the man for the job? You may have to unmute for me so that I can hear you, Edward. I just wanted to get your initial reaction. We have been told that indeed the president has nominated Eric Opoku for the minister as minister-designate for food and agriculture. And so I'm just looking forward to hearing your initial reaction to his nomination. I'm hoping I have better connection to you now, Edward. What are your initial reactions?
Yeah, good afternoon and good evening to all those who are watching us and listening to us. I think if you look at the Honorable Eric Opoku, he's a seasoned agriculturalist, and he's also a seasoned politician, you know, to the extent that he has been in Parliament before, came out and now, and then returned to Parliament, and he has participated extensively on food and agri committees, and his work in the public discourse whilst he was in opposition, was very visible. And I think that he has got a good understanding of the agricultural sector, apart from the fact that he himself is an agriculturalist, he's a farmer, and he has participated in policy making discourse regarding agriculture.
And what are your key expectations of her as an industry player?
Well, again, we need to break down the agriculture sector, and I think that his main focus should be to break down the agriculture sector and deal with it decisively, because the agriculture sector is so huge and so also diverse. It is not homogeneous, so he must do that. And then the next stage is for him to, whilst having that activity, he must consult the stakeholders there. You know, because of the diverse nature of it, much as he has good understanding of the agriculture sector, it cannot be said that his ministry alone knowledge is sufficient to address the challenges that are there. So these are immediate things, because so much has been pumped into the agriculture sector and it has gone into the drain. And we think that it should not be the case this time round. So to be able to ensure that we do not create waste is to make sure that from day one, the leakages that are there, which swallow all the resources and knowledge and disregard dissenting views, are all plugged. So he needs to do that immediately. So consultation with the stakeholders is key before he even assumes office.
Thank you so much for your time here on The Pulse. Now, we will be bringing you some updates on a new audit by PURC on the operations of ECG and what exactly it says after this quick breather. Please stay tuned in.